we need to talk about a brand new report from Yale's Humanitarian Research Lab. And honestly, its findings are a massive wake-up call for the world. Using satellite imagery, it documents a human security emergency that's unfolding right now, and it demands our immediate attention.
Okay, so let's get right into it. Just days ago, on October 27, 2025, researchers released their analysis of the city of El-Fasher in North Darfur, Sudan, and what they uncovered points to a grave and immediate emergency.
The whole report is built around this one critical question, right? Using data from the sky, they wanted to know what really happened in the moments after El-Fasher was captured. And yeah, the answer? It's deeply concerning.
All right, first up, the report's main finding is, well, it's incredibly stark. It confirms the fall of the city to the paramilitary group known as the Rapid Support Forces, or RSF. And if you know anything about the region, you know that's a name with a long, brutal history attached to it. But look, this isn't just about a flag changing on a map. What the satellite imagery is pointing to is something way, way darker. We're talking about atrocities. We're talking about mass killings of civilians. Okay, so you're probably thinking, how can they possibly know all this just from looking at pictures from space, right? Well, the answer is actually in their methodology, which is pretty powerful.
They use this technique called data fusion. And a good way to think about it is like building a case in court. The satellite image, that's your smoking gun, a key piece of evidence. But it becomes rock solid, like undeniable, when you start layering on top of it eyewitness accounts from news reports, social media posts. All of a sudden, you have this complete cross-checked picture of what happened.
So what are they actually looking for in these images? Well, it's the visual signatures of systematic violence, things like tactical vehicle formations, objects on the ground that are, chillingly, the right size and shape to be human bodies, even weird discoloration on the ground. All of these are potential signs of a massacre. And this is where it gets really chillingly specific. They zoom right in on one particular area, the Daraja Ola neighborhood. Why there? Because that's a place where they knew for a fact that civilians were trying to take shelter, just last week. And right here, you can see that data fusion method I was talking about in action. In this one single area, analysts found objects consistent with human bodies. These reddish stains on the ground that just weren't there before, and gun-mounted trucks blocking off side streets. You know, on their own, each one is suspicious, but when you put them all together, it paints an absolutely horrifying picture.
But here's the thing, the evidence isn't just static like a single photograph. The satellite data actually captures a city in motion, a city in flight. And this is where they connect the dots between the violence and the very real human story happening on the ground.
So researchers started seeing more of these really disturbing signs along the city's defensive walls. They call it a berm. And this is so significant because think about it, those walls are the very last thing people would have to cross to escape.
What this does is, this physical evidence from a satellite provides direct, powerful proof that backs up the horrific stories coming from people on the ground, these eyewitness accounts of people being executed as they were making a desperate run for it.
I mean, the imagery is so incredibly detailed. You can actually see large groups of people moving. It looks like a river of humanity just trying to flee the city. It confirms this mass exodus, with people pouring down specific roads trying to get to refugee camps or nearby towns. You know, one of the most damning parts of this entire report is the fact that this catastrophe, it didn't just happen out of nowhere. It came after so many extensive and repeated warnings. Just look at this timeline. It shows this predictable, just devastating progression of events. It all started with a private warning from this very same research lab to the UN Security Council. That was over 2 years ago. And what followed? A siege, then famine, and now what looks like a mass killing. Yeah, the fall of the city was really just the final, brutal chapter after a 1.5-year-long siege, and that period itself was already a complete humanitarian disaster. We're talking bombing, an unknown number of casualties, and nearly 15 straight months of declared famine conditions. So, after laying out all this evidence, the report comes to a very heavy conclusion. They describe what's happening as a systematic and intentional process of ethnic cleansing. And they're very specific about who is being targeted here. The report states that it's the indigenous, non-Arab communities, specifically the Fur, the Zaghawa, and the Berti peoples, who are the primary targets of this forced displacement and summary execution.
So now we get to the end of the report, and this is where they save their most powerful, most unambiguous conclusion. And it's aimed squarely at the international community.
The language they use here is so important because it's legally significant. It's very carefully chosen. The report says these actions are consistent with war crimes and crimes against humanity, and that they might even rise to the level of genocide, which is, of course, the single most serious crime under international law.
And just so we're absolutely clear on how much warning was given, get this. The Yale team published updates on the siege of El-Fasher, on average, more than once every 10 days, for almost 2 years.
And this quote, this is probably the single most important sentence in the entire report. It's a direct, powerful statement on global awareness and responsibility. It basically says, ignorance is not an excuse.
So, with this mountain of evidence, what do the authors do? They make an urgent, unequivocal call for action, for the international community to put maximum pressure on the RSF and whoever is backing them to end the killing, now.
So here we are. The data is crystal clear. The warnings were given, over and over again. This report just lays the terrible facts out for everyone to see. And it leaves us with this final, vital question. A question that really hangs over El-Fasher and, honestly, all of us. What happens now?